Let's go ahead and get started. So, yeah, we're working on the Saint-Saëns Movement 4. And again, my goal is to kind of two things. One is to give us a big overview of how we would go about learning something like this, because this one is pretty technical and there's definitely some fast notes and some challenges to it. And I also think kind of setting up the kind of structure of how to learn a new piece is really, really valuable. And then also we're going to be kind of talking about some practice stuff for probably the past 2 years or so. I've been really personally exploring kind of the learning science and the practice science and how do we learn as efficiently and effectively as possible. So that's kind of what I'm really interested in. So hopefully you all are interested in that too, because that's what we're going to be digging into. Let me real quick share in the chat a few files that will be helpful for us. So the first one, which we'll be looking at, is the Enthusiast Prelude to Clarinet Fest handout, which was actually based on a presentation that I did last summer at the Prelude to Clarinet Fest. So there's one on practicing and kind of the three phases of practice, which is the main thing we'll be looking at. There's also a bonus handout from a rhythm session I did. So if you weren't able to be at the Prelude event, then you get a free bonus rhythm handout just because they were in the same file. But the three phases of practice will be the most helpful. And then I kind of elaborated those three phases into actually like 6 to 7 steps to go step by step through learning and working on a piece. But let me go ahead and share those three phases of practice first. So this is sharing, hopefully. Let me give it a second. Okay, there we go. So this three phases of practice is basically a consolidation of my understanding of the learning science. And I wanted to start with this to kind of give you the big picture overview of what we're trying to do so that all of those little individual and directed steps make good sense as we dig into the Saint-Saëns here. So the three phases and the way our brain works is we need to basically have the correct information and make sure we're working with the right information. Then we have to consolidate it or encode it into our long-term memory. And then we need to be able to retrieve it from our long-term memory. You probably have all experienced at some point in your life where you've been working on learning a piece and working on practicing something for a performance, and you did that one spot like probably literally a million times. It may or may not have actually literally been a million times, but it at least feels like it was literally a million times of repetitions on that one tricky thing. And so often in practice, you were able to get it and it went pretty well. But then still in the performance, you messed up on that hard part, or you messed up right after that hard part. I think that's a relatable experience for anybody who's ever performed anything, really. And the reason why that happens is because we aren't training the right things of the brain. There's actually, in the learning science, there's a term called illusion of mastery or the illusion of knowing. And this comes from the idea of if you're like reading a textbook and reading a paragraph of information, you can reread that paragraph over and over and over and over. And you get the illusion that you're understanding it better because you're getting faster at reading it. It's almost getting memorized. It's going through faster, but it doesn't actually mean that you know anything about what that paragraph is saying. The opposite of the illusion of mastery, or the kind of antidote to it, is something called the testing effect, where you're much more productive if you read your chapter or read a paragraph and then later test yourself and see what you remember or what you understand from it. So this is like the learning science. There's a little bit on music learning, but a lot of the learning science literature is on academic learning. But I think we can take those ideas and apply them to our music learning as well. So instead of going to the Saint-Saëns and just being like, okay, well, I have to learn this opening. Let me make sure my original sound is on. Okay, I have to learn this opening, so I'm just gonna play it a bunch. Okay, I'll do it again. Okay, I'll do it again. And we get to the point where we have this kind of illusion of like, yeah, I can play that. I know what's going on there. because we've done it so many times. And what happens when we're doing those repetitions is it's all happening in our working memory, or kind of our short-term memory. This is why you can have a tricky passage and you get stuck on the tricky passage in your practice. You work through it, you figure it out, you make improvements on it, it gets better and better and better in that practice session, and then it doesn't stick the next day because it's getting better in your working memory and not your long-term memory. So what the testing effect does is it forces us to retrieve information from the long-term memory. And that's the skill we need to perform effectively, because unfortunately in a performance, you don't get to play every tricky passage 10 times before the audience hears it for the first time. So that's the kind of reasoning behind this stuff and how it works. I'll just very quickly go into what each of those phases looks like as well. And then you can kind of see how it's going to work in the 6 to 7 steps that we're going to work through today. And then we'll get into the music. So phase 1, we just have to make sure we have things correct. So if we're looking at that first line of the music, am I playing the right notes? Am I playing the right rhythm? And am I playing with the quality of sound that I want and the musical expression that I want? That one often gets overlooked, where sometimes we think, okay, I'll get the notes and rhythms figured out first, and then I'll add in the musicality and the dynamics and all of that stuff. I think that's a mistake, and I think we should get the musicality in as early in the process as possible. So that's step 1, doing whatever you need to make sure that what you're working with is correct. You're getting the music how you want it to go. Phase 2 is where we consolidate it, where we encode it more deeply. And this is where we need to get out of the habit of just doing repetitions, and we need to dig into doing engaged, mindful, meaningful work. So a really good kind of analogy for this is our brain naturally tunes out repeated stimulus. A perfect example of this is the clothes you're wearing. Right now, the skin nerve endings under my shirt are being stimulated by my shirt, but my brain isn't aware of that unless I bring awareness to it. But by default, my brain isn't aware of that because they've been continuously stimulated, so I'm not paying attention to it anymore. Whereas if I had a new stimulus, I might pay attention to that. So in phase 2, what we need to do is we need to keep the music fresh and figure out how to make it not just a repeated stimulus, not just doing rep, okay, my brain's not paying attention anymore. How do we keep the brain engaged? Which we'll talk a lot about. The fancy term to do that is contextual interference, which we'll definitely be doing quite a bit of in our work together today. And then phase 3, we need to cue or retrieve that information. This is kind of the testing effect that I was talking about, where we need to test, do we actually know this from our long-term memory without kind of warming it up in our working memory first. So that's the rough overview of the 3 phases of practice. Before we continue on, does anybody have any questions about that? Or is there anything that's unclear about kind of what the learning science is or how this all works? Feel free to either type it in the chat or you can unmute and ask as well. Cool. Going once, going twice. Great. Seems like it's clear. So that's good. What's not so clear about it is, okay, how do we actually do that and implement it in our music? So that's where the 6 to 7 steps, I think, can be helpful. There's also a step 0 on this, which we'll do in a moment in this session. So let me zoom in a little bit. So this is the actual practical implication of how do we practice in a way that we're actually doing those 3 phases of practice and implementing the 3 phases, because it's not as linear as it seems, where when we're looking at the 3 phases, it's like, okay, I guess I just get everything correct and then I consolidate everything and then I cue everything. And it could probably be possible to do that, but it's not nearly as linear as it seems. This is a way to kind of pull it out and make it a little bit linear. So first thing we need to do is kind of explore the piece, get familiar with it, kind of see how the piece works as a whole. Then we break it down into small chunks and do our isolated practice. One really overlooked step, I think, is the learn it step. Oftentimes we get a new piece and we break it down into chunks and we're like, okay, this is the hard part that I need to work on. So, okay, start digging into the hard part and we get the clarinet out and we start playing right away. But if you take a second to actually learn the music, get an idea and an intention of where it's going, your chances of getting that first phase and doing it correct go way, way up. So we'll talk about how to really thoroughly learn the music before you start playing. Then you can start playing it and fix any little problems or anything that's not coming out of the clarinet that you want. And that, so far, is pretty much all phase one stuff. We're getting a clearer idea of how the music should go correctly and making sure that we can do it correctly. Then we move into phase two, where we train it. And this is where we do the contextual interference and all that kind of fun stuff to make sure that we're keeping engaged. We're kind of entering that flow state, which we'll talk about a bit later as well. Then we have to test it using the testing effect, retrieving from long-term memory rather than short-term memory. We, of course, have to put it all together and make sure that all the transitions are good so we can perform straight through it, which is also a form of retrieval. Performing is retrieval, so we'll talk about that as well and do some of that. Even today, even if this is your first look at this music, you'll be performing at least some of it by the end of these sessions, hopefully. And then step 7 is kind of the optional one where you can grow and reflect on where are those kind of clarinet deficiencies, what are the opportunities for improvement, and then target those in your warm-ups, just like Chris and Mickey were talking about, where we want that kind of, okay, maybe my fingers crossing the break aren't going well, so I'm going to do some of those crossing the break exercises, etc., etc. So that's how it's going to look. So let's go ahead and let me pull up the music here. And the first step, looking at our steps, is to explore it. So listen and look through the music to identify key sections and challenges, just getting familiar with the piece as a whole. So what we're going to do is we're going to make slashes between big sections and star anything that looks scary as we're listening through. So let me pull up the recording. We're going to listen to Sabina Meyer's recording of this, which is great. This is such a fantastic standard repertoire piece that there's tons of really, really fantastic recordings. But let's go ahead and give this a listen. And as we're listening, I'm going to put slashes in where I'm hearing the big sections, and I'm going to put stars in on the things that sound a little scary and intimidating. Let me make sure my computer sound is sharing. Excellent. So yeah, we'll give it a listen. Slashes for sections, stars for tricky bits. And we're going to stop there because from here to the end is basically a direct repetition of the beginning of the first movement. So you'll have to watch the recording for Jay's session on the first movement for all of that. But I think that gives us plenty to work on through all of this first bit. So that was step 0. We're kind of exploring it. We're getting an idea for how the piece goes. We're kind of identifying sections that just sound intuitive, and also identifying things that might be challenging. And with this too, notice I didn't do a super formal harmonic analysis or phrase analysis or form analysis or anything too crazy like that. Absolutely, there's value in that, and knock yourself out like trying to strictly identify all of the phrases and all that fun stuff. But ultimately, we just need to kind of generally identify some sections and kind of chunk the piece out into some manageable chunks. And often just listening to it and seeing like, oh, this sounds like a different character, this feels like a different mood, there's a new idea happening here. That's all you need to do to start establishing this. And you don't have to be perfect about exactly where the chunks are. You just have to get a starting point. And with all of this practice science stuff, it's better to do a little bit of it and explore it rather than getting overwhelmed that like, well, I can't do all of that, so I'll just practice the way I've normally been doing. Take any little nuggets that you can and get the benefit from that. So we have our exploration done. We've mostly chunked it already too. We've identified some of these chunks, but let's dig in a little bit deeper and really pick a smaller chunk. With the chunking it, you want to identify a small enough passage that you can attend to all of the details. And I think this is another common mistake we make in our practicing where we're like, oh, I'll work on this phrase, or I'll work on this section, or I'll work on this page. And we start playing, and there's all kinds of opportunities for improvement that pop up as we're playing. But because we're dealing with so much information, we aren't able to really actually process it and remember all of those things. So small enough passage that you can attend to all of the details. Not even just notice all the mistakes, but get all of the details. So let's pick one of these hard passages. I'm going to start with this one that's kind of a notorious challenge of the piece, where we have these triplets here that appear to just be a chromatic scale, and then all of a sudden they aren't just a chromatic scale, which is challenging. So now we've identified our chunk. We'll go from here to here. And this is probably a good rule of thumb, is like 2 measures maximum when you're very first learning. Again, as a general rule of thumb. If it's easier music, you can go 4 measures or maybe even 8 measures, depending on your kind of skill level. But small enough you can attend to all the details. Now, we've identified this chunk. Now we actually learn it. And this, again, I think is the most important step. If there was like one skill that determines your like level of musicianship, or the one skill to be developing to improve your general musical skills, it would be this skill of audiation. Audiation is basically the audio version of visualization. Visualization, I can say, visualize a pink elephant, and you're seeing a pink elephant in your mind's eye. Audiation would be hear twinkle twinkle, and then you're hearing bum 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 bum. You're hearing twinkle twinkle. That's audiation, is hearing in your kind of inner ear. So we want to develop a really clear, very accurate internal audiation of how this should go. So looking at this chunk, rhythmically, is pretty straightforward. It's just in triplets. We'll double check the time signature. We're in 4/4. There's maybe an argument to feel this piece in cut time, maybe at moments, maybe throughout the whole thing, but we'll go with it in 4/4 for now. I think it's totally fine. So we start on beat 2 here, we get to beat 1 here. That's how the rhythm goes. I'll give you a little bonus piece of information here as well. I have something I call the reasons system, which is an acronym RSNS. Sometimes I also call it the 4 opportunities for improvement. This is a great way to kind of filter how you're looking at the music. The first R stands for rhythm. The first S, or actually there's only one R. The R stands for rhythm. The first S stands for sound quality. N is for notes, and the last S is for style. And this is kind of filters you can go to look at the music and learn the music. So starting with rhythm, we can all kind of clap and count this together. I'll get my steady 4/4 beat going. We'll go nice and slow. The way that I like to count triplets also is 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. I was totally taught triplet, like probably most people were. The way that I teach it is 1 triplet, 2 triplet, because that keeps track of the numbers. And it turns out triplet is a 2-syllable word, not a 3-syllable word. So let's try counting this. We start on beat 2 here, and we're going to get our rhythm going. I'll give us 3, 4, 1, and then we'll count starting on 2. 3, 4, 1. 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1. Sweet. Rhythm, very easy, very straightforward on this chunk. That won't be true for all chunks, but rhythm's solid. Now sound quality. This is something that works better when you're playing, but even in your audiation, you can be hearing, like, try to hear Sabina Meyer's sound and that really just crystal clear technique, really smooth connections between the notes, good rhythmic evenness, hearing that good clarinet playing sound so you know what you're aiming for, fantastic. Notes are a little bit more important for our audiation. So when we're looking at notes and we're learning a passage for the notes, what I like to think about is what are the patterns. So we're understanding the rhythm and note patterns. Rhythm patterns on this are easy, triplets starting on beat 2. But even within those triplets, thinking about kind of the 2 lead to 3, lead to 4, lead to 1, so we have that nice kind of forward motion to it. But looking at notes now, let's analyze the note pattern. And I'm going to give you a second to kind of think through this and see if you can come up with a meaningful note pattern on your own before I just tell you. It looks very intimidating, but it's not as bad as it looks. And when you think you have a meaningful idea, feel free to type in the chat what you think the note pattern is. Doesn't look like we have any brave people.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
I'm a little far away from my laptop to type in, but I mean it's a descending chromatic scale until you get to the middle D, and then it skips down to the B, A flat, and then resumes the descending chromatic scale.
Perfect. Yeah, very good. So yeah, we have descending chromatic scale until D, then skip to B. And then we also have a whole step from B to A flat. So these 3 notes are not chromatic. Yeah, Mike got that exactly too. So chromatic except for those 3 notes. And now all of a sudden, this initially kind of intimidating, tons of accidentals, fairly fast notes, not so bad, right? So that's kind of the note analysis. Now we know where we're going. We've identified a pattern. Then the last one is our style analysis, and this is also kind of in the bullet point of include all the style details as early as possible in the process. So for this one, there's not a lot of surface level style details, but I think there's still a lot of style and direction to this, and this is an important part of music too, is that the composer doesn't have to put in every single detail. It's our job to take the ink on the page and make it really meaningful and musical. So we have this descending chromatic scale. It's all slurred. That's a stylistic detail. We have mezzo forte is kind of our starting dynamic. But I also think in listening to the recording, it sounded this way. I think just kind of intuitively, I think it makes sense to have a little bit of a crescendo through this. This chromatic pattern has kind of a lot of forward momentum to it. So I think it makes sense that we want to lead forward to the E. So now we've looked at our reason system, rhythm, sound, notes, style. We have a clear idea of how this music is going. Now the final step is to actually hear this in our internal audiation. And again, kind of let you do this on your own. Don't finger through the clarinet. We don't want to bring any baggage of the clarinet with us. We want to just hear very clearly, like, how does this music go? So take a second to audiate through that with a steady beat is a great idea, so you have the right rhythm. Yeah, and I'll stop talking now so you can think through that. So hopefully you have a really clear idea of what you're aiming for. We'll kind of double check yourself. I'll play it and see how close what I play is to what you were hearing and audiating. So 3, 4. And maybe you're going faster than that, maybe you're going slower than that. Tempo doesn't matter so much for all of this. Don't stress about trying to learn things up to tempo, especially in the initial learning phase. We'll get the tempo going through other exercises and other phases. And a thing with tempo too is if it's not clean, then you're not learning the right information and you're not learning it as accurately and precisely as you could. So it won't be sinking in very accurately and precisely. What we want is for the precision of the musicality and the music and the rhythm and the notes and the fingers and all of that stuff to be in place, and then give that time to sink in and develop. Where speed comes from, just a quick tangent on speed because that's very significant for this piece because there's a lot of fast notes. The way speed works in our brain is we trigger a neural network. So that passage that I just played, that's kind of a neural network. My brain's doing these fingering patterns and those neurons are firing and going down to the muscles and telling the fingers to move. As neural networks fire, they get myelinated over time. And this myelination is kind of insulation on those neural networks. And the more myelin we build up and the more insulated they become, the more efficiently and quickly those neural networks can fire. Myelin only develops over time, so unless it's a pattern that you're already familiar with, and probably you are already pretty familiar with the chromatic scale, unless it's a pattern like that, you have to give it time to sink in. So tempo doesn't matter, accuracy matters to start. So that's our learn it step, and we have that really clear and a good idea of where we're going for that. Let's see. Yeah, we have a few more minutes left. Let's do a little fixing it step as well. So everybody can go ahead and play this on your own, play it as slow as you need to, but be thinking about that accurate rhythm, be counting 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet, 1, and having that audiation going in your head as you play. So I'll give you a minute or two to kind of play through that. Yeah, play through it a couple times if you want. Great. So now you've played it, you've kind of see where it's at, so now we need to fix it. And this is called the deliberate practice process. Again, if you want to get more into the science of all this stuff, deliberate practice is kind of the key thing in the fix it step. Audiation's the key thing in the learn it step. Exploring it and chunking it, there's nothing super scientific in those. But deliberate practice is what we're going to do now, which is this kind of plan, do, reflect, or I like to do it as do, reflect, plan, I think makes a little bit more sense. So you just did it. Now we need to reflect and consider what are some opportunities for improvement in that? How did it go? Was the rhythm perfectly even? Was the sound quality beautiful and clear? Did this very first note start immediately and precisely on time with exactly the sound that I wanted? Did I do the dynamics and the style? And did I get a crescendo, this kind of leading forward of the music? Were the notes accurate? Did I play all the right notes? Even if you played all the right notes, did you feel confident playing all the right notes? Did you have your hand position in good position? Were your fingers relaxed and precisely coordinating, etc., etc.? So take a second to reflect on that and just identify one opportunity for improvement, one thing that you could have done better. Even in my playthrough of it, I was a little uneven on some of these initial triplets, so I want to smooth that out a little bit, would be kind of my reflection. So take a moment to think about just the one biggest opportunity for improvement that you heard. And even if it went well, get really picky and find one big opportunity for improvement. And if you want, go ahead and either type in the chat what the one opportunity for improvement you're thinking of is, or you can unmute and say it out loud as well.
Yeah, Josh, for me, it was getting that break in the pattern, just getting that cleanly under my fingers. Because the chromatic patterns I know, but where it suddenly changes, I have to think of that either phrasally, in other words, hear it in the phrase that it's changing, that's the audiation you were talking about, and then my fingers will kind of follow.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a great one. And I think that's probably one that several people are having, because that's why this is kind of a notorious, infamous, tricky spot, because we get lulled into this false sense of security of like, oh yeah, I'm doing great on this chromatic scale. And it's like, oh no, it's not chromatic anymore. Yeah, totally. Tish mentioned the throat tone G to the side key F sharp. Yeah, that's a good one as well. So now that we have that kind of surface level reflection of what's going on, we have to keep asking, like, why is that a problem? What's the issue there? Until a plan to fix it becomes self-evident. So let's do this tricky one that John mentioned, because it's the tricky one for everybody, I think. So, yes, there's a problem here. Why is there a problem? Because it's no longer a chromatic scale. Why am I struggling with that? Well, maybe it's because, like I mentioned, you're kind of lulled into the false sense of security with you're playing a chromatic scale and then you're caught off guard when it changes. I bet even more likely than that, though, is even as you're playing the chromatic scale, you're worried about that change and you're kind of thinking ahead to it, and you know that it's going to be challenging and it's going to throw you off. So maybe that's the kind of next level is I'm worried about that change in the pattern and I'm worried that it's going to throw me off. So why are you worried it's going to throw you off? Well, because I know the chromatic scale so well, but I don't know that particular pattern. And this is getting very close to having a plan. The plan maybe from that is like, well, then get familiar with that particular pattern, which I think would be a fine plan. But let's see if we can keep going deeper. The deeper you can go on your reflection, the more quickly and effectively you'll be able to fix any problems that you're having. Also, I think beyond clarinet, I think this applies to life problems as well. The clearer and deeper you can reflect on what the problem is, the easier the plan to fix it becomes. So continuing to dig down into that. So I'm not familiar with this pattern. Why am I not familiar with this pattern? Well, like, what is it even? It's D, B, A flat? I don't know. Maybe that's a B minor 7th chord or a chunk of a B minor 7th arpeggio. And this is something we can throw into the kind of step 7, this external growth thing of like, oh, maybe I should be practicing my minor 7th chords. Maybe that's an opportunity for improvement and something that will make me more confident when I come to a passage like this, perhaps. Or I can keep reflecting and say, well, I'm not confident with my B minor 7th arpeggio, so is there something else I can do to make this kind of more logical? Maybe I'm overcomplicating the grouping, or something about this grouping doesn't feel good. So I'm reflecting on that deeper and deeper of this doesn't feel familiar because I'm not quite sure how it's grouping or what the notes mean. And that is also becoming a clearer and clearer plan. Can I come up with a way to change the grouping of these notes to make it a little bit more meaningful and a little bit easier? Let me look. So this D, all the way up to the D, is actually a chromatic scale. So that could be an insight right there, is even what Mike said, it's chromatic except beat 3. But actually even the downbeat of beat 3 is chromatic. And actually, the chromatic scale resumes here. So even this A flat to G is also chromatic. So really, it's just this one note that's not in the chromatic pattern. So that's an interesting insight. And then if I look at kind of how that note works, is we have D to B. That's just a B minor arpeggio. So that's something I'm familiar with. So maybe my plan here is to think about the groupings of where the chromatic scale starts, where it ends and starts actually, and see this more as, let me see, I actually think the way that I have it bracketed is pretty good. So it's chromatic, chromatic, stop, B, chromatic, chromatic, E. So let me try playing it that way really slowly, and y'all can join me with this. We'll start right on beat 1 of this measure. And we're going to stop, chromatic, chromatic, stop, B, chromatic, chromatic, stop. Let's try that. Ready? Go. So that's kind of the gist of the pattern. Now let's kind of associate that with the rhythm a little bit, and let's really feel this as lead to here, and then we're going to play B. I'm going to make B like a very clear start of a grouping, and then that grouping is going to continue chromatically. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, D, B, chromatic, going down. So we'll start at the beginning of the measure. I might as well throw one of those in there too. So it's going to be 1, lead to here, lead to here. Interesting note, lead to here, and then we just keep the chromatic pattern going. So let's try that, thinking that way. Ready? Go. That felt pretty good. Maybe this pattern still feels a little unexpected, so let's practice just this one. Lead to here. Ready, go. Again. One more time. Okay, now I have a kind of clearer understanding of that, and that pattern's feeling good. Now let's reintegrate it into context and try the whole thing all together from this first triplet. 3, 4... Oh, and I tied a little musical idea to that as well, where we kind of have this leading forward in the musicality. I think if we also kind of, when the pattern changes, that gives us a little extra drive and a little extra oomph. So I think that's also kind of a fantastic opportunity to tie some musicality to it as well. So we've learned it, we've fixed it. Now we'll get into testing it and training it in our next session, but we'll get a little break first. I think we'll have a couple minutes. Let me see if anybody's going back to the main room yet. No, I think we're good. Cool. Anybody have any questions about the process so far?
Just to comment, the next pattern is almost exactly the same. So you would kind of look at it the same way.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly. This next one works nearly identically. This one, it's chromatic to here. This B to A isn't chromatic, so the chromatic doesn't resume until A, G sharp, G, F, and actually F, G to F is also not quite chromatic, so it's a little bit trickier, but it's absolutely the same idea. Yeah. And that's a cool thing about music. I know it may feel tedious to like go in this much depth and this much detail on one small section, but once you've done it on this section, then the next thing goes way easier. And so much of music is so repetitive that the time pays off. So instead of having to do a bit of work here, 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 you do a lot of work here, and then you get to do very little work here and very little work here as the repetitions happen. Yeah. Cool. Any other questions or comments before we get booted out back to the main room?
I have a question about your learning steps.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing something else that is very tricky, and I have one particular measure where uh, it's a coin toss as to whether it gets played correctly or if it just falls apart. Um, so what would a good strategy using your steps be to go and erase what I've learned so far and fix it so that I can play something reliably?
Yeah, great question. Um, can you play it well when it does go well? It feels pretty good and pretty in control.
Yes. However, it's random and it doesn't happen in rehearsal like it needs to.
Yep, totally. Um, the train it step and the test it step that we'll be doing in the next session will be exactly what will help with that. So that's
Okay.
a perfect segue to the next session.
Yeah, it seemed to me that that was I saw your sheet and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I think this is the spot where I need to redo. So,
Yeah,
okay.
totally. That's a very normal phenomenon, and it comes from, I call it the pointless practice trap, where you're doing reps and reps and reps and reps, and it's like after you've done the 10 reps on it in your practice, it probably feels pretty good and goes decently. But then when you have that one shot in rehearsal, it doesn't. So yeah, the train it and test it steps will really help.
Okay.
Awesome. Cool. I think we're about to get rejoined with the whole group, but I'll hopefully see you all in the next session as we continue. We'll do a lot more playing in the next session now that you understand all the theory too. Excellent. So we're jumping back in here with our Saint-Saëns Movement 4. Let me go ahead and share my screen with the music. And this actually worked out perfectly, nearly perfectly. We're going to skip a step for a moment. So we left off with, we've explored it, we've chunked it, we've learning a chunk, we've fixed that chunk. We're going to skip train it for now. We'll definitely talk about that more on a different section. But now we're going to test it. And this is the key to when you have that experience like Michael was talking about of, well, sometimes you can play it and it goes pretty well. Maybe even goes quite well sometimes. But for whatever reason in the performance, in the rehearsal, when it matters, it's not going as well. And definitely some of the stuff that Dr. Razy was talking about in terms of like being relaxed and more fluid definitely can help with that, because if you're tensing up in the rehearsal, then that's a little bit of a different feeling than when you were in practice. So that could be part of it. The other thing is we need to test it more, and we need to leverage the testing effect to be able to retrieve the information. We have to be able to play it cold because we don't get warm-up reps in a performance, right? The fancy science term for this is spacing, or retrieval practice is another thing that you could look into, but we're going to play one rep with a period of 4 getting in between. So we're going to go to that bit. I'm not even going to pull up the music yet because I don't want you to think about it too much beforehand. The idea is to have as little of this in our working memory as possible. We just had that good movement session, so you've had some time to forget it. Actually, if you're watching the recording of this and that movement session is a different video, I totally recommend pausing for 5 minutes or skipping this testing rep and working on the other stuff and then coming back to it on the next testing rep or the next spacing. But we're going to pull up the music without thinking too much. We're going to play through that little bit once, no matter how bad it goes, we're going to go straight through, and you can go as slow as you need to do it effectively and correctly. So we'll pull that up. 1 repetition through, slow and confident. 3, 4. And you can literally go that fast, even though that's maybe half of the goal tempo, maybe less than half of the goal tempo. It's totally fine to go that slow when we're doing spacing. Now what I'm going to do for this spacing and for this testing is I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes. And every time that timer goes off, we're going to do exactly what we just did. Don't go back and fix anything. Don't do anything fancy with it. We're just playing it cold, 1 repetition through. So we'll set our timer for 5 minutes. Now we're going to go on to a different chunk. We've basically done everything we need to on that chunk. We could do more training it, but we'll do training on a different, harder section. And then performing it is kind of the very end when we put everything together. So we're going to go to a different chunk. This chunk, I want another very challenging bit. We're going to look at this G sharp. This is a diminished, it's a diminished chord. Hold on, let me think. G sharp, B, D. Yeah, diminished triad, starting on G sharp. And we're going to go, we'll start here. And again, with the chunks, we want small enough passage you can attend to all of the details. So we'll go to here. So this G sharp to this A is going to be the chunk that we're looking at. And the first step, once we've identified our chunk, now we need to learn it. So thinking about rhythm, thinking about sound, thinking about notes, thinking about styles, developing our super crystal clear audiation of how this goes. So I'll give you a moment to kind of audiate through that on your own. Great. And we'll test your audiation. I'll play it and see how close you were with what you audiated. I didn't play very well. Let me try it one more time. That was better. So in that audiation, did you hold this long note long enough? 1, 2, 3, and a 4. Did you hear the pitches fairly accurately? Were you able to hear this G sharp diminished triad? That's okay if not. You'll keep developing the audiation skill and get better and better at it. Did you hear it with very even rhythm? If you went faster or slower, again, that's totally fine. Tempo doesn't matter. But did you hear it starting pretty soft? And did you put any shaping and phrasing into it? There should always be shaping and phrasing in all music, right? So that's the audiation, and that's the learning it, being able to really know what we're going for. And next step is to fix it. So let's try doing it. Everybody can try playing it. And again, I'll let you kind of do this on your own. Do it at your own tempo. Do it at your own pacing. But make sure that you are feeling a steady pulse with it. Awesome. And as we're in the fix it step, we want to be really reflecting. This is the step that actually should have a lot of thinking involved in it, where play it once, stop and think. This is a very common way to get into the pointless practice trap of you play it and you're like, ooh, that wasn't very good. I can probably do that better. And you try it again. And you're like, oh, there was this problem this time. I could probably do that better. And you try it again. And we end up going very quickly just playing. But we aren't actually really fixing anything. The trap of this, and why I really do call it a trap, is things will get better by practicing that way, but you won't know why they're getting better or how they're getting better, which is another thing that leads to inconsistency. So you have to do it very mindfully, play it. reflect. That went pretty well. I think my sound quality could have been a little better through the throat tones. I'm feeling a little finger tension as I'm moving through here. Why am I feeling finger tension? Well, I'm not particularly comfortable with a G sharp diminished triad, so maybe I should be practicing my diminished arpeggios more. Reflecting, I don't think my tempo was totally steady on that, so maybe my plan is to do it with the metronome, go slowly enough that it can be really comfortable, really relaxed, and also slow enough that I can think about the tempo too. So let me go ahead and pull up my metronome. And I'm going to go extremely slow. This is way under tempo, but let's try it together at 68 beats per minute, starting on that same chunk. Relaxed fingers, relaxed body, good air, good sound, precise rhythm. 2, ready, go. There's still, I'm even hearing like there's a little dip in the sound quality as I descend over the break, so I think I need to keep thinking up, keep the support up. Oh, it's just spit in the clarinet. That's the problem. And sometimes the plan is as simple as blowing the spit out. That's better. Cool. So that's the fixing it. That's solving problems. And in this step of practice, and this is very phase 1 of practicing, we need to be making sure that we're solving problems and we know how we're solving problems and we're deliberately trying new things and finding solutions in them. So that's fix it step. Now we're going to do some train it on this. So again, if I just kept doing reps, my brain would tune out and no longer be paying attention to the reps that I'm doing. So now I need to get it engaging. But before that, I paused the timer. But the timer is going to go off in 10 seconds. So we'll say the timer went off. So that means we do spacing. 1 time, straight through, don't think about it too much. 3, 4. Oh, I felt that was actually even a little more musical than I had been doing it. And even if that went super bad, don't fix anything. Just give it another 5 minutes to retrieve it. So contextual interference is the term for mixing things up to kind of produce some desirable difficulty to keep it engaging for our brain to learn it. I bet you've probably done things like dotted rhythms or practice rhythms before, where you just do kind of that long, short bum, bum, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da, da-da, 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 something like that. That's an example of contextual interference. The problem with this, though, or maybe the opportunity, depending on your perspective, is that the dotted rhythms get kind of boring pretty quickly. You can only do a handful of repetitions of dotted rhythms before you're again just doing repetitions and the mind has then tuned out. So I think one of the biggest tricks in practices and the biggest practice skills is the creativity to continuously come up with contextual interference exercises that yield a desirable difficulty, and continuously having the patience to go through all of those contextual interference exercises that produce desirable difficulty. So let's try one. Let's try just the basic long, short dotted rhythms, just so everybody's familiar with that. And we're going to do, I'm going to get rid of that long note for the sake of time. So we're just going to do bum, ba, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, da, ba, dum. Let's try that. I'll give us 1, 2, and then we'll play on 3. 1, 2. Apparently that was harder for me than I thought because I missed a note. And that's okay. When we mix things up, we're going to make mistakes, and then we have to refigure out those mistakes, and that's the benefit of them. Let's do it long, short rhythms again. 1, 2. So that's one thing. But I bet that's not particularly challenging to do. The goal of contextual interference is we need to find something that makes us go like, wait, what? How do I do that? that's going to be really hard. I don't think I could do that. That's desirable difficulty, and that means that your brain is re-engaging and is actually getting stuff encoded and consolidated into the long term. So let's try one of my very favorites is we're going to play just the notes on the beat, but we're going to finger the other notes. So we'll play bum, finger, finger, bum, finger, 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 bum, finger, 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 bum, finger, 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 bum. Let's try that. And I'll actually stand up so you can really see my fingers. 1, 2. So you can still see the fingers are very snappy, very precise, but we're only playing the notes on the beat. Let's try it again. 1, 2. And if you want to add even more challenge to that, still try to have the shaping and the phrasing that you want across even just those individual notes. Give me like a thumbs up if that was surprisingly challenging to do. Good. That was immediate thumbs up. Yeah. Yeah, that one always is really tricky. And you can get even crazier with it, and instead of playing just the first note of each beat, play the second note of each beat. That one's even harder. And then you can do just the third note, and then just the fourth note. So that's one contextual interference idea. Another common ones are playing it backwards. Another really hard one that I like to do is I call it like skipping a beat, or kind of playing in like as if it's in a scale in thirds, where a scale in thirds, we play a note, skip a note, go back to the note, skip a note, go back to the note. You can do that with the beats. Play this beat, skip the next beat, play the next beat, go back to the one you skipped, skip, go back, skip, go back, skip, go back, and then land. I'll try to demonstrate that one just so you can hear how that goes. So we're play this beat, skip to this one, go back to this one, skip to this one, go back to this one. It would sound like... That's a challenging one if you want some real desirable difficulty. We won't actually do that though at the moment, because it's really hard to do together, and it's one of those things where I think one of the tangential huge benefits of contextual interference is it forces you to go slowly enough that you're actually in control, because it's really hard. The official benefit is the desirable difficulty, keeping the mind engaged so you keep learning. Big tangential benefit, it bubbles up mistakes that you didn't know were there, and it forces you to go slowly enough that you can fix those mistakes. But timer went
Hey
off?
Josh,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
hey Josh. Um, you can also try it by adding one. You start off with the first part of the phrase, so the G, B, and the D, and then you add
Mhm.
the next note. You go back down, and then you add on the next. I think that tends to, for me, highlights the note or any note within the connect as you connect the notes, which one is dropping out, especially when I'm coming down. Over there where you got the A, G sharp, the A, G sharp, F sharp right there in the throat tone. Have a tendency, as you noted it when you said yours dipped, if fellas do it dipped out. Have the tendency that you could play right through that and don't realize that you lost your tonal center or the sound where it remains really even. That me playing it, adding one more note at a time, usually helps me to highlight which ones are need to be better supported.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's great. And that's a perfect example of how the contextual interference will sometimes bubble up these opportunities for improvement that you weren't aware of when you were just playing through the big chunk. And you get to fix those. Just as a quick other little tangent on like kind of performance psychology, when we have the performance nerves and the adrenaline going, our actual like perception and our senses get heightened when we're in that kind of fight or flight mode. So in performance, often we'll also hear more issues than we heard when we were practicing. So yes, there is a bit of it went better in the practice room than it did in the performance, but also sometimes we're more aware of things in the performance than we are in practice because of that heightened adrenaline, and contextual interference can bring some of those to our attention before the performance, which is fantastic. And yeah, there's infinite things you could do for contextual interference. Anything that makes you think about it and anything that produces desirable difficulty or brings more awareness to things, perfect. Awesome. Let's do our spaced repetition of this. And 3, 4. Fantastic. Now, we were working on training that bit. We did our training. We did our contextual interference on that. I do want to talk about one other thing in the training it step, which is this idea of the flow state. This is a great indication that you're practicing efficiently. The flow state is done or came up with by researcher Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is a Hungarian-American researcher, and basically determined that when you're in the flow state, that's when you're most immersed in something, you're getting the most learning, and you're getting kind of the most growth. And the way we get into the flow state is by having it be challenging enough that we aren't bored, but not so challenging that we're frustrating. So we have to be in that sweet spot. And I think a really good analogy for this is just like growing our physical muscles. If I went to the gym, I could probably start lifting 5-pound weights and get some benefit from it because I'm really weak and out of shape. But after about 2 weeks of doing that, I probably wouldn't be getting benefit from lifting 5-pound weights anymore. So I need to increase the weight or change the form of the exercise to kind of change the leverage and the intensity on the muscle. Same exact thing for the brain. You could do 2, 3, 5, 10 repetitions of this, and then it's straightforward, and it's like lifting the 5-pound weights. You're not getting a lot of benefit. We add the contextual interference, which makes it re-engaging, challenging again. We continue growing, etc., etc. So that's the train it step. Let's do... oops, I forgot to reset the timer. That's the hardest part of spacing, is remembering to turn the timer back on. But otherwise, it's just playing through it once. So we've learned, we've trained this section. Let's do another section. Let's take... There's those chromatic things coming up again, very, very similar. Let's take this section, and I'm actually going to do... I'm going to change this chunk a little bit. So this is, I think, musically where the chunks are. We're going to play a little bit of an overlapping chunk. We're going to go from here to here. And this is probably borderline too big of a chunk. It's not possible to attend to all of the details in this, but there's a few important key things that I want to hit on this. So we've identified this chunk. This is our step 1. We know what chunk we're working with. Step 2, we're going to learn this chunk. So take a second to audiate through this on your own. I'll erase these stars and slashes so it's not so confusing. So starting here, audiating on your own. Great. Now that you have an idea of what you're aiming for, I'm going to play through it and see how close your audiation was and how accurately I play everything. Apologies for however the high notes came through on the computer microphone and everything. Hopefully it wasn't too bad. But also hopefully you could hear there was dynamic contrast in that, right? In your audiation, did you start piano? Was this fortissimo? Did you have good shaping of this phrase ending and then going into the trills? Again, et cetera, et cetera. Take a second to reflect. I would reflect on this. Go ahead and give it a try and see how it goes for you with a playthrough of it. Now we're in the fix it step. And like I mentioned, the fix it step, be stopping, be thinking, be reflecting, figure out the opportunities for improvement, make a deliberate plan for how are you going to do it differently to make it better. And the reason why I picked this section in particular is this one probably has a lot of step 7 in it, where we're reflecting on kind of fundamental clarinet deficiencies or deficiencies in our clarinet fundamentals, and kind of making a plan for more long-term improvement. So as you're playing this piece, you might think, I don't think I've ever played a high A before. Like, what even is the fingering for a high A? Or what would be a good fingering to leap up to this G? How do I get those high notes to sound smooth and comfortable and confident and things like that? Well, that might be something that you're not going to fix in this particular practice session, but you're going to be thinking about for more of the long term of, okay, apparently high A's do come up occasionally in music, so I should probably get comfortable with those in my warm-ups and be able to do long tones up to high A and things like that. So that's another kind of aspect and element to this whole practice plan is having those kind of growth opportunities in there as well. The timer's got 10 seconds left. We'll go ahead and say that the timer just went off, and we're going to do our testing. Now we're going to do that chunk that we've been doing, but we're also going to add in the other chunk, the G sharp arpeggio, and test that and see how well we know that. Always going as slow as we need. So starting with this one. And 3, 4. Nice. Then the next one, we'll go ahead and start back on the long note. Don't think about it too much before we play it. But let's try it. Really slow, really in control. 3. And we've now tested that. We're going to set the timer again and do that again in 5 minutes. For spacing, as it gets better and better, you can extend the time between retrievals, which actually we'll demonstrate on this next 5-minute chunk. So now let's talk about the perform it step a little bit. So this is the playing straight through without stopping, staying focused in each moment. This orienting selective attention is the kind of fancy science term to be thinking about for this. This one's very simple. It's just paying attention to what you want to be paying attention to at any given moment. But we need to be able to do that over a long period of time when we're playing through a whole chunk of music. This one, ideally, you would have gone through the other steps on things before you put it together, but we'll kind of fast track that to demonstrate this. Let's go with this section here. So say we're looking at these triplets to rehearsal to, and say that you've learned through this, you know how it goes, and as you were learning through it, maybe you did these 2 measures to start, and then you did maybe these 3 measures as the next chunk, and then you did this next chunk, and then this chunk. So it could be totally reasonable when you're working in small enough chunks to attend to all the details that you were doing 2 measures, 3 measures, 4 measures, 3 measures, those kind of smaller chunks. But then we have to perform it all straight through. And again, I don't think we have enough time to actually have done all of that because I really wanted to dig into the other steps. But just to give you an idea of what the performing would look like, similar to spacing, where you're kind of in performance mode and trying to go straight through, just focusing on performing. This is another form of retrieval practice. So you can try kind of reading through this with me. Maybe you've been working on this a bit, so you do have that background. But let's try it. We'll start right at these triplets on beat 2 and play straight through in performance mode. And I'll give us 3, 4, 1, and then we'll start on 2. 3, 4... And that would be just kind of a performance rep of it. And you can start performing very early in the process. As you get comfortable with the testing it and doing those spaced repetitions, once the spacing is up to tempo, then you can do the spacing as a performance repetition. But the main point of step 6 is kind of getting the transitions flowing together, looking again at the big picture of the music. So we start with exploring the music by listening through the whole thing and getting that really big picture. And then we can, again, return to the big picture as we go through the entire piece. So that's the big keys to that step. And again, it makes a lot more sense to do it after you've been working on the piece for longer. So let's keep going with our selecting chunks and digging into things. Let's do this stuff at rehearsal too. And again, we have to do a small enough chunk that we can attend to all of the details. So let's start with ba-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-da, dee-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-da. Let's do just 1 measure. And we'll kind of go through a little bit faster through the process. So again, you can start to see how this might look in your actual practice. So 1 measure, learn it, audiate through it, think about the rhythm, think about the notes, figure out where you're going with all that pattern stuff. And we will, of course, add the downbeat B flat too. And now let's try playing it, now that you know what you're aiming for. 3, 4. Pause, reflect. The timer just went off, but we're going to do this 1 more time before we do the spacing so that we can implement any of those reflections that we just came up with. So you've paused. You've reflected on this. Now do your plan. Execute whatever your plan is to make it better. I'm going to start a little bit more fortissimo and have stronger air support. Think about the musicality and express the emotion is my plan. 3, 4. I'll take that. Now we're going to do spacing. This one has been going well, so we don't need to space it this repetition. We're going to extend the amount of time. We're going to instead do just this one. 1 time through, slow, steady, confident, easy. 3. And that's our spacing. spacing for now, reset the timer, most important part. If you want to just use an interval timer so it automatically goes off every 5 minutes or 10 minutes, works a lot better. Going back to this, now that went pretty well, so we're going to go on to the next section. Let's do, again, just one measure. Audiate first. Know what you're aiming for. Think through it. I should mark this as going to the downbeat. Now play it. 3. Reflect. My reflection is I'm probably not going to be able to do the resonance fingerings at tempo, so I'm going to do it without the resonance fingerings this time to learn how that'll go and to get my voicing to sound good on the throat tones without resonance fingerings. Implement that plan. 3. Quick reflection. I think I also probably want to do the sliver key for that last E flat, and that time I did the side key, so I could do that differently. With the fix it step, do as many reflections and as many plans as you need to get it going really exactly the way that you want, with good sound, good fingers, good rhythm, good note, good style, all the stuff. But for now, we're going to keep going on. And let's go all the way to here for this chunk. Audiate, learn it, know what you're aiming for first. Let's try playing it. 3. Oh, a bad start. Let's try again. 3. And even in your audiation, did you have the E flats carrying through? Reflect on what you just played also. Try to come up with one big opportunity for improvement and a plan to fix it. My reflection is, again, I lost track of the musicality a little bit. I was kind of just playing in relaxed, going through the motions mode. But I want to reconnect to how this goes. This is a very exciting, very kind of rambunctious, energetic moment. So even when I'm playing slow, I'm going to have that musicality in it. So that was my plan, is audiate it at tempo to feel the energy. And now I'm going to play it that way at the slower speed with that energy. Same 2 measure chunks starting on this E flat. 3. So even when we're going slow, we can have that expression. Now we've done our fix it. The next step is to train it. And we could have done the train it step on any of those individual chunks, but I'm going to try doing it on the bigger chunk now and see how that comes together. And already that's a little bit of contextual interference, is just doing the bigger chunk. So let's play just the 3, 1, 2, 3, 4 measures, 3.5 measures, as written, to see how that feels and how that goes. 3, 4. Take a second to reflect on that. As we're doing the bigger chunk, there will certainly be things that come up that we can fix. I moved my fingers a little bit too much on that last arpeggio and almost bumped a side key and caused a little squeak to happen. So that's an opportunity for improvement for me. Let's see. What's my plan to fix that? I'm going to not get too excited about the musical expression, and I'm not going to let that excitement for the music translate into the fingers. I'm going to just keep it in the air and the sound. And I'll try that. And go ahead and implement whatever plan you have based on whatever reflection you came up with. Right at 2, 3. Yeah, that was expressive in the music, not overly expressive in the fingers. I'm happy about that. I felt really in control. The timer did go off, so we're going to do spacing. We skipped this one last time, but now we're going to have 10 minutes of forgetting and then try this. So right from here, 3, 4. And the other spacing as well. 3. Oh, I'm glad something went wrong in my spacing, because that's totally normal. Things are going to go wrong. I can reflect on that. When I went up to this B, again, my fingers got a little wild and I accidentally pressed the C sharp key a little bit, so the B didn't fully come out. So I know exactly what went wrong there, but I'm just going to let the subconscious process that in the background. I'm not going to do it again right now. And this also trains our acceptance for when things don't go well in performance, because every professional comes away from every performance with a list of things that didn't go as well as they wanted, which is perfectly normal. But we have to recover from those things, and we have to accept those things, or we'll hate performing. So that was that. Now going back to training this bit at 2, we're going to do, let's see. This is another fun exercise. This is kind of like the skip and go back exercise, but instead of doing it for every beat, we're going to do it for every measure. So we're going to play the first measure, skip to the third measure, go back to the second measure, skip to the fourth measure. Let's try it and see if you can keep up with that. First, third, second, fourth. Nice and slow. 3, 4. Give me a thumbs up if you were able to do that well, thumbs down if it was really not good, or anywhere in between. How'd that go for y'all? This was a less immediate, confident thumbs up as the last thumbs question. Cool. Let's try that one more time. First measure, third measure, second measure, fourth measure. And 3, 4. Spitty. I'm actually going to swab real quick. I forgot to start the timer again. Okay, we don't have enough time anyways, but that's the train it step on there. So then we could also, of course, put that into our spacing now that we've learned that. So this is kind of the general process for it. Does anybody have any questions about how this works or how to practice in this way? Excellent. Well, I hope it was helpful. And to prove if it was helpful or not, this may or may not work. If this doesn't go well, this doesn't mean that the process doesn't work. It just means that you need a little bit more time to sink in. But I bet this might go surprisingly well. We're going to do one final spaced repetition on this bit that we've been working on. But now we're going to do it at tempo. And notice we didn't have to spend a lot of time gradually increasing the tempo. We're just going to try it at tempo and see how it goes. 1, 2, 3, 4. Give me a thumbs up on that. Did that go well? Did it not go well? Went well for Mike. Awesome. Excellent. How'd it go for... Not good for Michael. That's okay. Did it go well for you, Tish? Good or bad? Not so good? That's okay. And this is totally normal. And again, we need a little bit more time for it to sink in. But you'll be surprised if you just stick with this, just the idea of spacing. If you take nothing else from this, like just try spacing for a week where you don't do millions of repetitions on the tricky passage. You just do it once, slow, totally in control, really confident, once every 5 minutes. Do that for a week and see what happens with it, and see how fast you can get it without having to try too hard. So last call for any questions about this process.
That every 5 minutes bit. So I can use this on my other piece that I need to relearn two measures. It seems like just keep going back no matter what I'm doing, go back, play it cold.
Yep, exactly.
That's a cool technique. Thank you.
Yeah, spacing is the most effective for like the performance confidence. Once you can play it really comfortably, then do spacing on it, and the performance reliability will definitely come, so that you can do it cold in rehearsal or in performance. Yeah. Also, depending on how tricky the bit is, doing some contextual interference and stuff could also be really, really helpful. I do want to say before we end, first of all, I have a YouTube channel, Quickstart Clarinet. If you want to just Google or search on YouTube, Quickstart Clarinet, any problems you're having, I probably have a video on it because I have well over 500 videos now. So that's a great resource. Also for this practice science stuff, Greg Goodhart, greggoodhart.com is his website. Lots and lots of good stuff. He's also goes by The Learning Coach. So if you just Google Greg Goodhart, The Learning Coach, his website should come up, and he has lots of good resources on this. Tish, did you have a question? No? Okay. Cool. Yeah, we'll have 20 seconds before we get kicked out. But the next part of the event is Q&A anyways. So if you have any questions about this and want to get other people from the enthusiast committee's opinion on anything too, then that'll be available in the next session too. So great work, everybody. And I hope you feel a little more confident playing the Saint-Saëns.